Now for this week's Smith Business Close-Up, we are on location at the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. And joining us is the new Dean of the Smith School, Alex Triantis. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks very much for having me here.
You are new to the executive suite, but not new to the faculty. You've been teaching a while.
That's right. I've actually been a faculty member for 25 years, 18 years of those here at the Smith School. And I have always loved and had a passion for teaching. So this is going to be a little bit of a different role, being away from students in the classroom, but interacting with them a lot outside of the classroom. And in my research, I've been a finance professor for all this time. So hopefully those finance skills will come in handy.
So what made a veteran finance professor take a management role?
You know, in addition to doing my teaching and research, I've always had a lot of interest in our programs and trying to develop the business school and working together with faculty and staff and students and trying to come up with new types of initiatives in the school. And this just seemed like a great role that I could do a lot more of that.
You took over at the beginning of September and like every good business school professor, I'm sure, did an analysis of the opportunities and threats that the school and education in general face. How do you see it?
Right. I have done that, and I think one of the reasons why I found this to be a particularly great time to be a business school dean is that, to your point about opportunities and threats, that education is really transforming at a dramatic pace right now, really fueled by all the new education technology. So the question is, what can we do to respond quickly? What are our competitors doing? And how can we use this as an opportunity really to be as innovative and entrepreneurial as possible?
How would you describe your posture at the moment? Certainly there's some schools that are attempting to be on the leading edge. With that comes a little bit more risk, and there must be others taking more of a wait-and-see approach.
That's right. We are not necessarily the first out of the gate on all the education technology. I think we've been looking at what other schools are doing. We do think that it's a good time to press forward on a number of initiatives. One of them is an online MBA program, which we're actually starting in January. We're going to have our first students. Again, we're not the first school doing this, but I think we've got a great offering that combines both online programming together with resident programming as well, which is really one of the critical elements, is not just how do we use technology to be able to teach remotely, using videos, using synchronous learning tools, but also what do we do with the time that we have in the classroom? How do we maximize that for experiential learning, for instance?
So with your decades of teaching, how do you see the online stuff? Are there necessarily some trade-offs that the distance learning might take away from the student experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would never recommend something that I haven't tried before. So the first thing I should tell you is that last spring I actually experimented with what we call blended learning. And blended learning essentially is we have some of the content delivered through a video format. The students would watch that online ahead of the class. And the great power of it really is that it frees up time in the class to spend a lot more talking about what's going on in the day, in the day's business news and how that relates to the content. It allows for more simulation of business type environment, of having debates as they might in a boardroom, looking at actual problems that companies are facing. So that to me is really the power of how do we design that to be as realistic as an opportunity as possible for students to learn while they're here.
One of your areas of interest has been risk management over the years. Bringing that perspective to this job, what do you see? Right.
Well, my particular view of risk management is probably a little bit different than the traditional way that we think of that word. Traditionally, risk management is how do we avoid bad things happening. And we've had plenty of examples of those things happening in financial and non-financial companies over the last decade, and trying to understand how companies have responded to those. I also view risk management as how do we exploit risk, how do we exploit the upside opportunities. So this online and distance education is a great example of that, where technology has enabled us, presented a lot of uncertainty in terms of what other schools are doing, but it's also presented us with opportunity. So what do you do with that? Well, you try to plant seeds. You try to, what I call growth options, or part of what my research was about, is investing a little bit in different types of programs and seeing what works. And if something really is very effective for the students, you try to grow that. Flexibility, how do you design new programs in a way that are flexible, that you can change the curriculum to adapt over time quickly, seeing what our peer schools are doing and also what our students are looking for and what our recruiters are looking for, because they're also trying to learn how they should be training their own folks and understanding what we should be doing before they get them.
Speaking of the students and the business community, how do you want those groups, other stakeholders, to perceive of the Smith School of Business?
Well, I view businesses and business schools as being a very symbiotic relationship in terms of, again, having this dialogue with the folks that are ultimately going to be hiring our students and understanding what they're looking for, which I think is transforming over time, and figuring out how we can better prepare the students. So, so the flow goes that way in terms of understanding businesses. It also goes in the other direction in terms of the research that we're doing here at the business school and what we can do to transform companies in the way that they should think about problems. So we are hopefully going to have very tight relationships with companies. We already do, and I'd really like to put a lot of effort in strengthening those relationships over time.
Very good. Alex Triantis is the dean, the new dean of the Smith School of Business. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks very much, Jeff.